say that detective work is like, well, being a detective. And when you're the world's first and only historical detective like me, life can be, well, how should we say, interestingly old, questionably questionable, remarkably remarkable.
He gets this way sometimes.
Oh, this is Newt, my faithful research assistant.
More like slave.
He thinks he's a person, but he really runs on AAA batteries.
You have email.
Oh, and this is Meg, the heart and soul of this fine investigative operation.
You're too kind.
Yeah, but what kind, we don't know.
Email. Probably an important message from our main client.
And only client.
Just as I suspected. An important message from the National Kids Bureau of Historical Questions and Answers. Thornton Thorntonberry.
Orton Thorntonberry.
Right. Thornton Thorntonberry.
Good morning, Diggy Deeper.
Diggy. Oh, how cute.
Doug Deeper. I hate it when he does that.
Donald, the Bureau has been receiving lots and lots of questions from kids about that big old ship, the Titanic. And when kids have questions, we need answers. Click yes to accept this mission. Click no to lose money.
Well, at least he gives us a choice.
Welcome aboard. This email will permanently delete in 3 seconds. Good luck, doggy.
Diggy. Dougie. I mean Doug.
She was called the Titanic, and on April 10th, 1912, she left England on her first voyage across the Atlantic. The Titanic was the largest ship in the world, designed to be safe as well as comfortable. Yet, 4 days into her journey, in the middle of the night, she hit an iceberg and sank to the bottom of the ocean.
End video clip. Reference file saved.
The Titanic? The Titanic? T-H-E-T-I-T-A-N-I-C? Big, black, red, wet. I love it already. We're gonna go on an adventure and we're gonna learn all about it.
I don't have a bathing suit.
Bathing suit? I'll get you a baggie. What do we know? What do we think? What do we say? Well, the video said that the Titanic was the largest ship. But what if they just say it was the largest ship, but it really wasn't? What if they were wrong? Meg, download archive number 001. We've got digging to do. Try some keywords like 1912, big, boat, good movie.
Research file locked. Loaded and ready. Voice style?
Oh, I don't know, surfer dude, seeing that it's near the water and all.
Yo, dude, let me tell you, that Titanic was one rad floating palace. Like, that boat weighed over 46,000 tons. That's as heavy as a herd of 13,000 fat hippos. And the ship was 1/6 of a mile from end to end. And the rudder, you know the rudder, that up and down thing in the back that makes it go this way and that way, it was as tall as a giant elm tree. This big bad girl was so huge, you could walk for miles on her decks and passageways without ever covering the same path. Oh, and she was powered by 159 coal-burning furnaces.
So, whose idea was it to build these ships anyway? Meg, let's load some photos. You are gonna love these pictures. There were two shipbuilders, Lord Peary of Harland and Wolff and Bruce Ismay of the White Star Line, who decided one day to build 3 giant passenger ships to carry people back and forth across the ocean. Each ship would cost around $7,500,000. But Peary and Ismay felt that staying ahead of the competition was well worth it.
The 3 ships were to be called the Olympic, the Titanic, and the Gigantic.
And this is where they built the ships, right here in Belfast, Ireland. Now, if you were going to build the ships again today, it would no longer cost $7,500,000. Why, it would cost $400 million. Well, and for that, well, you could buy 4 million kids' mountain bikes. And if you rode one each day, it would last you 11,000 years. Olympic, Titanic, and gigantic. That sounds familiar. Meg, download archive number 999. Try some keywords like music, history, worst selling, rap. The Olympic was the first to sail up and back the Atlantic. Then it was the others' turn. They called it the Titanic. The Titanic had the big grandeur. The rich owner, he did cry. And so they added on and they added on. Became the coolest ship, no lie. I was just getting a little exercise.
Hey, Disco Doug, we still haven't found out if the Titanic was the largest ship of its time. I always have to stay on him.
Well, then let's dig deeper. Meg, download number 405, ASAP. We'll use Newt's voice.
Hey!
You didn't like the surfer dude. Let's see how well you do. Let's go investigate.
Archival footage locked. Channeling audio through Newt.
The Irish shipyard was alive with sounds of construction. First on the Olympic, then on the slightly larger Titanic. It would be the biggest ship around. The construction employed 14,000 ship workers who worked around the clock, building the ship by hand. With nearly the whole town working on the vessels, construction was all anyone could talk about.
Belfast was very, very proud of its shipyard and the great vessels which had been built there over many years. I remember looking up at this big steel hulk and saying to my father, he described to me how someday they would take away all the props that held up the ship, the timber props, and it was greased below, and then would release it all, and it would slide down into the water.
You know, it's still amazing to me that a ship that big could actually float, especially when it's made out of such heavy materials like steel and iron rivets. This is a piece of steel, real steel. I got a real deal. And this is an iron rivet. It's used to help to keep the pieces of steel together. Now, you wouldn't think that someone would want to build a ship out of such heavy materials, but there's a reason for it. Steel is tough, and tough is exactly what you need if you're going to build a ship the size of the Titanic.
Hey, Diggy, if it was a safe ship, how could it sink?
Who was that?
Mother calling on my modem.
Okay, but your mother does bring up a good point. And it's Doug, not Diggy. Everyone says that the Titanic was practically unsinkable. But what if the Titanic wasn't practically unsinkable? I mean, how bad was that big girl anyway? I got that from the surfer dude. Meg, download,
Number 204, keywords, safety, design, graphics. My mother's voice.
your mother?
I don't get to hear from her that often.
Everyone said that the Titanic was unsinkable. That's because it was designed to float with any two rooms in the ship's belly flooded at the same time. Let's say the ship crashed into something head-on, like another boat or an iceberg. Any three of the first 5 watertight rooms could be flooded, and it still wouldn't sink. Good design. They had watertight doors separating each of the watertight sections. All the captain had to do was flip a switch, and he could close them at any time. That's why they thought it was unsinkable.
See, with Meg's help, your mom was able to answer her own question. Is she gonna bill us for that?
You bet. She's calling long distance.
Well, we've already learned a lot about the Titanic, but as we all know, great historians.
Always dig deeper. Ice.
Oh, gosh. Thanks for the warning. Man, that hurt.
It's not like I didn't warn you.
And that's exactly what happened to the Titanic. The captain and his crew didn't pay much attention to the warnings of icebergs ahead. Speaking of which, what is an iceberg anyway? Now, icebergs aren't made in ice cube trays. They wouldn't fit. But what they really are is huge chunks of ice that break off glaciers and fall in the ocean. See how it floats? That's exactly what icebergs do, but they're in the ocean, not in this glass. They wouldn't fit. Meg, download archive number 555. Keywords, ship, bang, oops, ice.
Oops? Ice?
Yeah, well, it's not like they meant to run into it. Let's continue on the adventure and dig deeper.
The winter of 1912 was unusually warm, and it caused ice to break off the Greenland coast and float in currents toward the North Atlantic shipping lanes. The Titanic did receive many warnings of icebergs ahead, but the captain figured if they saw any bergs, they could simply navigate around them. On the fourth night at sea, two men stood shivering in the crow's nest high above the ship, watching out for icebergs. Unfortunately, they didn't have their binoculars that night to help search the dark ocean. Then, suddenly, they spotted a ship in the water, which grew bigger and bigger. One of the men rang the warning bell 3 times.
What do you see?
Iceberg, ahead!
But it was too late. 37 seconds was not enough time to turn the ship away from the iceberg.
37 seconds? Well, that's not much longer than my favorite cereal commercial. What if the captain and his radio men had listened better to the warnings of the iceberg? What if the lookouts hadn't lost their binoculars and they could have given more warning to the bridge? Could this collision been avoided? Possibly. But there was another problem. This wasn't just a normal iceberg. This was a
Blackbird.
Thank you, Meg. Nice touch. That's right. It was a black berg. Not to be confused with a black bird, which you can easily navigate around, and also it wouldn't cause a collision. It was a black berg. And what that is an iceberg whose center of gravity has shifted, and it flips upside down. Normally, the top is very white and easy to see, but that becomes the bottom, and the bottom becomes the top, very clear and dark and icy, making it nearly invisible.
Okay, Big Shot. What about the waterproof doors?
Now I know where you get it from.
He loves you, Mom. Wants you to come over and cook him dinner.
Meg, download archive number 911, ASAP. Iceberg, damage, sinking, your choice voice.
The iceberg ripped through the hull of the first 6 compartments, and the watertight doors made little difference. The hull was now open, and the water was really gushing in through each individual section. And yes, the rooms were divided with horizontal bulkheads, but they didn't have watertight tops.
Oh, I get it. As the front of the ship went down, the water overflowed each bulkhead divider, weighing the ship down into the ocean. Make sense, Mother Newt?
Okay. Not bad for a history guy.
Eventually, the ship went down. But where in that huge ocean did it sink? And where is it today? Well, I'll give you a hint. It's in the same place. Because once a ship starts to sink, it's going nowhere but down. See this island off the eastern coast of Canada? It's called Newfoundland. And a few hundred miles south of there is where the Titanic was and still is today, on the bottom of the ocean. Meg, archive number 100, Wreckage, Explore, Down.
In 1985, a research team found the Titanic on the ocean bottom. A year later, they would return with a pressurized submarine called Alvin and an underwater robot named JJ to explore the sunken ship. It took 2.5 hours to go 2 miles straight down to the pitch-black bottom of the ocean. Once there, they saw the Titanic for the first time. The lights were bouncing off the portholes, and it looked like eyes. Deck chairs and other items were scattered along the ocean floor like salt from a shaker. The discovery of the Titanic left many questions of what really happened on the night it sank. It took less than 10 minutes for the ship to sink over 2 miles, plowing in the silt at the bottom of the ocean. The hole in the ship that the iceberg made was permanently buried deep in the ocean floor.
Pretty awesome stuff. You know, as exciting as it is to relive the story of the sinking of the Titanic, it's also important to remember that 1,500 people died the night the Titanic sank, mainly because there weren't enough lifeboats for everybody on board. But the lessons we learned from the Titanic have saved lives today. Now, all passenger ships are required to have enough lifeboats for as many people on board. And that's not all. Now there's special teams that search the world's oceans for icebergs that might be dangerous to ships. So you see, we can learn a lot from history. And sometimes what we learn can help us prevent history from repeating itself.
It was 1912, set to sail, Titanic was at shore. Splendid with enormity, the power of her roar. The flags were waving, crowds were cheering, such a dazzling sight. The power of a dream come true, her maiden voyage leaves tonight. Oh, Titanic, upon the big blue sea. Oh, Titanic, tell us of your history. A rich man's paradise, a poor man's way to the promised land. London to New York with luxuries and swinging bands. As midnight came, the stars would shine, the sea as smooth as glass. Danger was ahead, the captain said, and all too fast. The wonder ship could not compete with an iceberg they could not see. The next day the whole world would mourn the Titanic tragedy. Oh, Titanic, upon the big blue sea. Oh, Titanic, tell us of your history.
Well, team, looks like we did it again.
Let me guess. You forgot to write down all the important stuff we learned for Orton.
Didn't need to, my handy-dandy mini-mutant computer buddy. For when you're the world's first and only historical detective, history can become second nature.
You want my help, don't you?
You mind? Dear Thornton Hortonberry.
Orton Thorntonberry.
Right, Thornton Shortenberry. Today we learned a lot about the history of the Titanic. Have we got answers for you?